This is a demonstration on how to make a buttonhole with the Bernina 145. The first step when constructing a buttonhole is to measure the diameter and the width of the button. To do this, you will place your button on a ruler and measure the diameter, and then you will measure the width of the button. And this button is 1 1/8 inch. When constructing a buttonhole, you want to use the buttonhole presser foot, and this little dial will help measure how big the button will be. You'll want to move it accordingly, and I have already done so. So you'll want to put your buttonhole presser foot on the machine, and then you're ready to set the machine up. For this particular machine, the buttonhole stitch is 0, so you'll just click buttonhole stitch 0. It is best to construct a buttonhole with 2 layers of fabric. If you are using interfacing, you'll want to put your interfacing in between the fabric before you begin, and most buttonholes are constructed on a completed garment. It is best to practice doing a buttonhole before you do it on your completed project to make sure it is the right size and there are no issues with the machine. I have done so right here. The next step when making a buttonhole is to mark where you want it on your finished product. You want to use a marking pen that will come off of your fabric easily. This is a marking pen that comes off when you iron it. So I want my button 2 inches away from the top of the fabric, so I will mark 2 inches down. And then I want my buttonhole to be 1 1/8 inch, so I'll mark 1 1/8 inch from that. And that is where I'll want my button. Normally you will measure how far you want your buttonhole from the edges of the fabric, but I will not worry about this because it's not a real finished product. After you have marked your fabric, you'll want to place your fabric under the presser foot and line up the presser foot with where you marked your fabric. I marked the first mark under this hole, and you'll put your presser foot down. Now is when you'll begin sewing. You'll want to hold your threads to make sure they do not come undone when you first start stitching. Your machine should still be set to stitch number 10, and you'll start. You begin by pushing on the presser foot, and the machine will start sewing the button stitch. The machine will travel all the way up to this mark where I want it, so it's the right size. And when it reaches that mark, you push the back stitch button, and that will bring it over to the other side. You'll keep guiding the fabric all the way back and push the back stitch button again once you reach the end. The machine will then automatically go forward, and once it reaches the mark again, you push the back stitch one more time, and it will finish off the buttonhole for you. Once you have finished sewing your buttonhole, you'll want to clip your threads, and you'll want to clip these threads as close as you can to the fabric, but without cutting the stitches. And then you have your buttonhole. The final step in constructing your buttonhole is cutting the opening of your buttonhole. I find the easiest way to do this is by folding the fabric in half and lining up both side seams of the buttonhole. I then take my scissors, being very careful not to cut the threads of the buttonhole, and do a little snip. Once you have done that, open the fabric again and fit your scissors into that little slit. And then you will very carefully cut up the fabric, careful not to cut any of the stitches, to the very end, and then you'll do the other side. And then you have the opening of your buttonhole. And as you can see, we now have a buttonhole. And that is how you construct a buttonhole on our Bernina 145.